My guest at this time is a writer for Sports Illustrated. It is our very good friend, Justin Barrasso. Justin, thank you very much for taking some time to chat with me here today.
Hey, appreciate you asking or reaching out as well. Thrilled to connect as always.
Oh, man, yeah. Always fun chatting with you, Justin. Well, before we get into, a bunch of other news, man, of course, the breaking news here in the past 24 hours or so has been the effect of COVID-19 on both AEW and WWE. How do you feel? What's your reaction to this recent rash of outbreaks for both promotions at like the same time?
Well, I think it's just, a reflection of society. The virus is real. People need to treat. It's tough too when you're not in that bubble setting. I think we've seen that in Major League Baseball. Somehow we haven't seen it yet. It's still early in the NFL. But I think the bubble scenario works so much better. It's not feasible for pro wrestling, right? Pro wrestling is just too active. The NBA, we've seen the bubble work for a few months, but I mean, for WWE or AEW, how would you sustain that? So to me, it's not that surprising when you don't have the capability of a bubble. Especially working out of Florida where it's been prevalent, and maybe Mass or, not even at the shows, Nick, right? It's more so in terms of people have to live their lives outside of it too, and I think it's bound to happen when there's no bubble.
Do you think that it's time for WWE and AEW to move in a bubble-type direction? I mean, Cody just left to do a game show, and that had a bubble. Do you think it's time for the AEW and WWE to move in that direction?
Not a bad idea, especially if I think that people, in general, wrestling fans care about the talent they're watching. So I think that if it meant we had to see a few episodes of taped content, so you could go in the bubble, you could quarantine, or you could self-isolate, you could make sure you could test, and then you could air, you could film however many episodes. Say you film 8 episodes or 10 episodes. I think that viewers would be understanding that the talent needed to be safe too. I don't think it has to, especially in the midst of a pandemic. I don't think it needs to be live every week. Now it might be different with WWE with television contracts with Fox and NBC Universal. But I think that it's something to consider. The priority should always be the safety of the talent.
Yeah. Last night's shows were obviously affected by these outbreaks. How do you think AEW and NXT did last night, picking up the pieces and having to reshuffle their cards in general?
I thought both shows were really good. I thought it helps when you've got people on your, AEW. I know people say, they're signing this guy or that guy. Where will they fit on the roster? Well, I think last night it's great to have someone like Eddie Kingston on your bench.
Yeah. And
you can call on him for whatever reason, if it's a COVID thing or an injury, or Eddie's just extremely talented. He told that match, Nick, I thought, through his eyes. Like, he was so good. You could see how hungry he was for that moment, how much he relished that moment, and how much he took to capitalize on that moment. I thought that was a highlight of the show last night. Every time Thunder Rosa steps on screen for AEW, I think there's just a different presentation for that product. The women's match was very good. She adds so much to their product. I hope we keep seeing more of her. For AEW, again, for NXT, I think it's Shotzi Blackheart adds so much life to that product. And so much fun to see, too. One of my frustrations with NXT TakeOver 30 was, not that it wasn't a great match, but you see Adam Cole and Pat McAfee. To me, a takeover 30, what a great chance it would have been to have Cole and O'Reilly. O'Reilly had his moment last night. I think people are going to be surprised who haven't seen his work in Ring of Honor.
Yeah,
he's really special. He's not just a tag. You know this. We've sat shows together and watched him and marveled at how good he is. Yes, he's great in the tag team, but he is also spectacular on his own. And I think we're going to see that a Balor O'Reilly match. That's going to be special. So I think both shows did really well and both stood out, especially given the circumstances around them.
Well, I know that earlier in the show here, because I'm recording with you after I recorded with Justin for the news block, we were comparing Kyle O'Reilly to Jey Uso in the sense that it's like, I don't see either of them winning the title, but they seem like guys that are getting a chance to show what they can do outside of a unit in a one-on-one environment. Do you see the comparison there? Does that resonate with you?
Absolutely, especially for the WWE audience. Not everyone watches everything, right? So I think it's important to note that, Kyle's had these opportunities before. Jey Uso hasn't. But to me, it's not even about the title, Nick. I'm with you on that. I just think it's an opportunity for both of them, both of those performers, both those men, to establish themselves in a different light on the biggest stage they've worked yet. For Kyle OReilly, that's in NXT, to prove that he's a main eventer. He can still work tags here and there, especially special matches, special one-offs, but that's a great opportunity for him. And then Jey Uso, and maybe I know Roman's been advocating for him to be in that spot. Jimmy's hurt too, right? Jimmy had the ACL issue at WrestleMania,
right,
which is too bad they're not together in this program. But I think it's a great opportunity for Jey to show that he belongs. He's got that Chronicle on Saturday. We're doing an advanced preview on that. That'll run tomorrow on SI.com. And I think Jey Uso's story is really special. He's a guy who's given his life to the business of professional wrestling. Right or wrong, there have been many times in his life where he's put secondary to his work. It sounds cold, but I think that if you want to be a pro wrestling star, right?
Yeah.
You want to make it this business. That's what you have to do. Nick, it reminds me so much of, I know it's not a perfect parallel, but it reminds me of, they're a wrestling family, right? So it reminds me a lot of the Harts, the Fatus, in the sense that I know they're not brothers, they're cousins, but there's a little bit of Brett and Owen in this too.
I was going to say that. I see where you're going with this. Yeah, 100%. Go ahead. Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
I see a lot of that. I think it's going to be special, and I think that I know everybody's talking about Roman bringing out a different side than Jey. I think Jey brings out a different side than Roman. You don't want to get upstaged by your little cousin who's a tag team wrestler and you're the star. So I think there's going to be some competitive nature there too. Obviously, they're going to put together the best match they possibly can. I think that's a special moment. I think between that, Nick, and the Intercontinental title match on Sunday at Clash of Champions, I think we're in for one of these kind of surprise shows that we say, man, this was amazing. I think there's a lot of potential for Clash of Champions to be very special.
I agree with that. Back to the Brett Owen comparison. Of course, Owen got some big surprise wins over Brett too. Early on, Brett really helped establish Owen. With Kyle OReilly, and especially with NXT teasing this mystery man, which we can get to here in just a moment, it seems a foregone conclusion that he's not going to take this title. But with Jey, it's like even this morning I saw him tweet something out with he's like, my own son is betting on Roman, for this Sunday at Clash of Champions. Is there a chance that you think we see some kind of surprise win here for Jey Uso, maybe enraging Roman Reigns and leading into something like Hell in a Cell where he could take this title back?
I don't think so, personally. Yeah, I think that to me, it's going to be done in stages and in steps, and you've got to build this guy in the main event. And you look back at Brett and Owen, and I know it's a different circumstance, but Owen wins the match at WrestleMania 10 against Brett. Brett wins the belt later that night. So that's the how do you establish Jey Uso on Sunday with a Clash of Champions without him winning the title? I think that's the challenge for WWE, and that's the objective. I think it's too soon to put the belt on him. I think he should have a run as champion if this program goes well and he becomes a single star. I think he's got unlimited potential in the main event and as a WWE champion. But I think it's got to be done in stages. It's just so sudden to put a guy we haven't seen since WrestleMania, put him back on television as a singles guy, and then in a couple of weeks have him win the title. I think that's too soon for me, Nick. But that's how do they tell this story? There's potential for this to be a really special story, especially when you have such layers in Jimmy Uso, who'll be back at some point. You could do something with Rikishi if you wanted. You could tie in the memory of Umaga, who is one of the key factors. The Usos credit him more than their father for getting him in the wrestling business. And then, of course, there's The Rock. There's so much you can do. So I hope this has the potential. I hope they're laying the groundwork, the foundation on Sunday for something really special. And I think with Roman having so much say in his creative, I think that's the direction it'll go. I guess I would be surprised if we see a title change, though. Would you?
I would be very surprised, but again, it's like, Roman can take this belt back. I mean, if Roman's going to put anybody over to surprise anybody, it would be somebody related to him like Jey that he's advocated for. I mean, I guess, on the surface, it doesn't make any sense because you're trying to establish Roman as this new heel or whatever and is this new dominant champion. But for him to pick up a few fluke loss here early on and then just go off the chain and destroy Jey Uso and set up this Hell in a Cell match where he could just humble this guy and take the title back, I mean, it's outside the box, but I don't put it past WWE to try something like that.
Especially to Roman Reigns is Roman Reigns, right? He didn't need the belt. He doesn't need the belt. He's one of the biggest stars in the world with or without anything on his shoulder or around his waist. I agree. Jay's going to need it at some point. I wouldn't do that this Sunday. I think it just needs more time. But it depends on how the story is told too, right? I mean, looking back at the Attitude Era, everything was week to week, and we used to love watching. And maybe the story suffered for it, but there were ratings and people were talking. I don't know what the best route is for this Sunday, whether it's to put the belt on Jay or to keep his. I like the build. I want to see a story. I want to see him win the belt over time. I think Sunday's too sudden. But then again, if he won the belt on Sunday, of course, we'll be watching that following Friday on SmackDown to see what happens next. So It'll be really interesting how they play the story out.
I agree wholeheartedly. Let's jump back over to NXT here real quick. Of course, like I said, with Kyle O'Reilly, he's a little behind the eight ball here because it does seem they're setting up something bigger, and I would think with Finn Balor. This mystery man coming back to take the title, teasing a former champion. For your money, who do you think this mystery man is?
I thought it was you. Am I wrong?
I mean, I don't know. Maybe. Possibly.
Well, I'm a little bit down on surprises after the whole Retribution unveil on Monday. You only get one chance to make a first impression, and I'm jumping off the topic, but I'll reconnect it. Man, was that bad. And I like the talent involved. The frustrating thing about Retribution is the talent involved is really good. But man, the way it's presented is everything, right? Especially when you first see it. So to me, they really have an opportunity here, especially on Wednesday nights when you're trying to compete, or you are competing with AEW, and you're trying to draw some genuine buzz to your program. And I'm sure they tell us otherwise. But Nick, I think we both know the demos mean something. The overall rating, those numbers mean something to WWE, and that's why I don't think they'll ever move off Wednesday night. It would be a sign of defeat. But I don't know. I'm curious to see what happens there. But again, I think that it's to me, it's in the presentation. How is it delivered? That's the key.
Yeah. Well, one thing I wanted to get your take on too is the Velveteen Dream situation. He was off after Takeover, the last Takeover, for a week or two. Then they brought him back for a week, and now he hasn't been on TV again for the last 2 weeks. What do you think is going on here with Velveteen Dream?
I don't understand it. I think that the lack of transparency from WWE's end is it's exacerbating the problem. If there's a problem, they should be open about it. I think if there's something to hide, then there's a problem. But I think it was you on the last Takeover call with Paul Levesque with Triple H, and you asked, and he said, "Well, we already discussed it." But the thing is, Nick, there'll always be more questions no matter what the situation is.
Yeah.
But I think from the company standpoint, if you're upfront and open about the investigation, and it's a big news. To me, this story's running water, right? Like it's you can't turn the faucet off. It's out there, right? You can't put the toothpaste back in the bottle. I think if WWE was, and this is the frustrating thing too, right? WWE is so much good work for the community at large, for children. They have so many great initiatives. So to hurt their message with something like this, if there's something wrong, if he did something wrong, it's bad. It deserves to be exposed.
Yeah.
But if you're hiding something, that's really, really bad too. So I'm just surprised. My conversations too have been about the lack of transparency on their end, and maybe they will, do the right thing and announce it. But I think people who are asking the questions are doing the right thing and asking. I think a situation like that is a very, very sensitive subject, but it's one that deserves transparency.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought up that call, Paul, because, I was a little nervous asking that question because obviously Paul had said on the call before that he didn't want to discuss it anymore, and I pressed him again on it. And, journalist to journalist, and I saw John Alba and Sean Ross Sapp worked on that COVID story with AEW last night, which I was very impressed by. This has got to be something. Yeah, this is something where I feel like it's got to be a bit of a team effort here, where like WWE can't say the conversation is ended, move on. We have to, in a sort of way, move and support one another and continue to press them, where if he bounces around the room, he's going to have to continue to confront these questions until we get an answer from them. Because if they're setting the rules for when you do and do not get information, it's going to be very hard for us to crack these bigger stories.
I understand their perspective, trying to look at it from their end too on those calls, like the takeover calls, even for the AEW call after the last pay-per-view, and trying to get more information on Matt Hardy. When terrible situation there, the head injury and potential concussion, which they said he didn't have one, but obviously a serious injury. Those calls, it's tricky because those calls are designed from the promotion standpoint to highlight the show, where things happen too, right? Triple H or Paul Levesque is pretty open about, or as much as he could be, I think, about the Karrion Kross shoulder injury. Like, they didn't have answers. I think he was pretty transparent about that. But it's tough to me if you have Velveteen Dream on your show. It's relevant, right? Until there are answers. If he's not on the show, I could see, maybe there's an internal investigation, and I can understand why they'd say wait and see. But if he's on the show, I know that's not necessarily the point of those calls, but those questions have to be asked. I agree wholeheartedly with you there. Again, whether or not that's what they want to be asked on those calls is one thing, but again, I think if those situations occur, and if people are on the shows with allegations, or if injuries occur on the show, I think that's all fair game. If it's something that relates to that show.
Yeah, and last thing here before I do want to get your take on Animal. I know we're real tight on time, but how do you feel about Matt Riddle? Do you think he's been significantly hurt by the stories coming out in the last week or so about him dropping this restraining order, looking for this civil suit against his accuser right now?
I don't know the answer to that, and I don't know if any of us do. How much is, and it's a big question, it's a pertinent question too, how much of social media is, and social media has a very loud voice, extremely, but how much of WWE's fan base is aware at large, right? I don't know the answer to that. I mean, I think he's been hurt by it. It's not a good story.
She's being represented by the Time's Up people, man. That's not some small movement there. That's the real deal. These are the people that have worked with some big name Hollywood female celebrities to fight the power. They've got a game plan.
My question is, though, at large, like, and I don't think every WWE fan is on social media, is on Twitter. So I just wonder, and it's hard because if there was a crowd, we would know, right? If Riddle was getting booed out of the building, or if he was doing some great spots and getting cheered, I think we'd have a pretty good, at least a better indicator, right? Whether people, the pulse of the situation, we could read it. But with the empty arenas, or with the Thunderdome, he's not going to get booed at these shows, right? So it's that makes it difficult at large. I mean, again, the story is definitely it's a bad story for her. It's not good. And like you said too, she's got serious representation behind her. But I don't know in terms of how wide-reaching it is. Because again, I think it's unfair to assume every fan's on social media and following it. And WWE has so many younger fans too, and even older fans, plus 50. I don't know if they're on social media either. So I think that without fans, it's hard to have a firm grasp on how much how upset, which way the wind's blowing in terms of the fan base and Matt Riddle.
All right, lastly here, Justin, the passing of Animal, Joe Laurinaitis, hit us all out of nowhere. Too young, in my opinion, only 60 years old. What was your reaction to the news, and do you have any personal favorite LOD memories you'd like to share with us before we let you go?
Thank you for asking. Can I ask you one Riddle question, Matt? Nick, what do you think of the Riddle thing? Do you think it's going to hurt his career long term? Do you think people are paying attention? I'm sorry to jump back, but I'd be curious to hear your take too.
I know that you've got a call here in a second, so I was trying to wrap up for your sake. My opinion on it is it has the potential to become something much larger, and the more they present this guy, the more ammunition they're giving to their critics. I think the guy should be benched. It's hard for me to watch Riddle right now, personally. And I know I can't be alone in that boat. I think until this thing is done and cleared, I don't think he should be on WWE TV.
And to make it, to even touch on it as a storyline,
dude,
what was that?
Dude, it was dumb. And I think that, but here's the thing is like, I don't know what was told to other people or what they're trying to do. I think that Matt really wants this to be just about the affair, right? And I have heard, and I don't want to get into people's personal lives, but I don't know that his wife was that shocked or upset about the affair. I don't know what their arrangement is, right? This to me is more of an issue about the sexual assault, right? And so to focus on how this is only something about an affair that, again, maybe him and his wife were not, as upset about, considering what maybe their arrangement may be. If he can keep the focus on that and not the assault part, I think that's what he was trying to do in that. And it grosses me out to think that if my line of thought on that is true, that would mean that WWE and by proxy, I guess their creative, was kind of a little bit complicit in helping Matt Riddle try to craft some kind of public narrative about what is going on in this situation. And I don't want to feel like I'm connecting too many dots here and drawing aspersions or anything, but all of this stuff is way too gross for me. And even having to have those thoughts is nothing I want to be dealing with.
Yeah, it's tough. I think that shouldn't be what this. If that's the case, and we're jumping, right? But if that's the case, this show has so much potential to be compelling and entertaining and fascinating and fun. Like we mentioned the Jey Uso situation or Kyle O'Reilly. Like those storylines are great. So yeah, it was whatever the reason was, it was included. I didn't like it. So and hopefully we're thinking the worst, but hopefully that wasn't the case.
Yeah. All right. Well, we will wrap it up here. I know that I've taken you over time, Justin. You have another call to get to. Do you want to share any thoughts on Animals passing or your favorite memories of LOD?
I would. Thank you. I think I'm biased. I think it's the greatest tag team of all time. I think, and it's hard to say greatest in pro wrestling, and it's so subjective. How do you choose the greatest? But I think that tag team, for what they did, for how they came kind of out of nowhere onto the scene, and they were just special everywhere. They were presented the right way. They made it cool to be a wrestling fan. I know as a kid, I was 9 when they won the tag titles at SummerSlam. It was just, or was it SummerSlam 91, right? At MSG. So I was just a kid, and I think LOD is special. They made wrestling unique. They made wrestling fun. And you can't think Hawk without Animal too, right? That SummerSlam 91 was so special. They showed up at 2 spots too. They had Andre's back earlier with to set up the Natural Disaster feud at SummerSlam 91, and they had the moment with the Nasties too. And at Madison Square Garden, they had their career obviously spanned to Japan. And they don't get enough credit, I don't think, LOD for what they did for Billy Gunn and Jesse James, how they helped establish the New Age Outlaws. When DX was pivoting away from Shawn Michaels and into Triple H and something entirely different. So I think that it's the greatest tag team of all time, in my opinion. Heartbreaking that wrestling loses one of its giants. And like you said too, Nick, at the age of 60, dude, man, that's way too young. I feel like he should be starting his second run in life and life as a grandfather or family life. And for wrestling to lose him it was a very sad day in pro wrestling.
Agreed. All right. Well, Justin, anything you want to plug, promote, put over here before we wrap up the interview today?
We'll have an advanced look at that WWE Chronicle on Jey Uso. That'll run Friday. Saturday, there'll be a Jey Uso interview, which I'm really excited to run. I think this is an opportunity for us to see him in an entirely different light in the main event, which is so unique. There'll be UFC coverage this weekend as well. And there'll be a review or kind of a takeaways piece after Clash of Champions on Sunday. And on Monday, there'll be a piece with Ethan Page, Impact Wrestling star. So there'll be a lot. You can find me at si.com/Justin Barrasso. I'm at Justin Barrasso on Twitter.